What's up, everybody? I am jacked up for the launch of this Upside Down series. Come on. As we get into this, I want to give a special shout out, because I know we have a bunch of people in the room. I also know we have a bunch of people watching. I want to give a special shout out to those of you I know are watching from North Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, Texas, Colorado, Hawaii. We do not feel sorry that you're not here. England, Germany, and all the way around the world. And Bahrain, we're glad you're with us on the webcast. Give it up for them. Now, if you're lazy and you just slept in, you're in your PJs in Maryland, you just should have been here. All right. I want to ask you, what do you do when you can't see? What do you do when you can't see? When I was growing up, I went on this field trip to Mammoth Cave in the middle of Kentucky, one of the biggest caves in the world or North America or something. And they take you on this tour and show you the big caverns, explain the geology, talk about all this cool stuff, and it's really interesting and cool to look at. But then they get to the best part. Because every time they take you on the tour of this cave, they do this thing where they say, okay, in a second, we're going to turn the lights off. And there's not any extra light coming in. There's not like light coming in under the door or like a street lamp coming through the window. It's just going to be pure black. And they say, nobody talk, because we just want to experience it. And nobody move, because you'll get hurt. You'll fall off a ledge or something. So they say 1, 2, 3, and then they turn off the lights. And it's black. In fact, the Bible at one point speaks about a darkness that can be felt. And that's what I thought of in that moment. I waved my hand in front of my face and couldn't see it. Couldn't even hear the people next to me breathing. And then right when you're getting scared, they turn the lights back on. You're like, okay, everybody's here. Am I the only one that crapped my pants? Okay, good. Let's just keep going on with the tour. What do you do when you can't see? Solomon wrote a long time ago, where there is no vision, the people perish. Don't you find that's true? Don't you find that's true on your sports team? Like if one person's goal is to score the most points and another person just wants to have fun, but the coach's goal is to win the championship, it falls apart. Or if you're a teacher and you've been teaching for several years and you know what reaches third graders, but then some lawmaker says, well, this is what's going to be on the test, and you have to alter it. You have competing visions. It doesn't work well. You've seen this at your job, where maybe it's the end of the fiscal year and the boss comes to you and says, listen, we haven't spent everything in our budget this year, but we have to do that if we want to get the same amount next year. I know you don't need anything, but just spend money. I don't even care what you spend it on. You leave work feeling depressed because you think my department has lost its vision. Those of you who are students see this when it comes to sex. You see people around you dealing with guilt, shame, shallow relationships because they're experimenting freely instead of having a vision that sex is a beautiful bond in the context of marriage. And don't you find this true in church? You've seen churches implode or decline in size or care more about some minute point of theological difference instead of truly helping people. Why does that happen? That church lost its vision. Where there is no vision, the people perish. When I say vision, here's what I mean. Simply a picture of a preferred future. Vision is a picture of a preferred future. Today, my goal is to help you have a vision both for your life and for this church. So we're going to learn from Jesus and see what his vision was. Luke chapter 19. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zaccheaus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. The Romans outsourced tax collection. So what they did is they hired somebody to collect taxes, and they said, anything you collect above what we require, you get to keep. That's what Zaccheaus had done. He had become rich doing that. I mean, you can understand the more manipulative, the more devious he was, the more money he'd have for himself. But there was something deeper going on here too, because this was the geographical region the Jews believed God had given them. And so anyone who worked for the Romans, who had conquered the Jews, was looked at as someone who is opposing God's will for their own people. So Zacchaeus was just utterly despised. Zacchaeus tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When I was a kid, we sang this song growing up in church. Zacchaeus was a wee... Oh, you all went to Vacation Bible School too. You're with me. When Zacchaeus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Zacchaeus, you come down. For I'm going to your house today. Okay, we're freaking out all the people who've never been to church before. We will never do that again, I promise. Verse 6, Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people are displeased. He's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Now that last sentence, it's easy to write off as them being like arrogant or selfish, but I'd be the same way. If Jesus came to Elkridge, you know whose house I'd want him to come to? Mine. This would be like if the governor came to our region and said, I want to have lunch with somebody, so how about a Republican? Or if the Pope came to town and said, I want to meet with somebody, just one person, one-on-one, how about a non-Catholic? Or if Joe Flacco said, I want to take out one hardcore football fan for a beer and let's just talk football. And he said, how about a Steelers fan? You'd say, you're crazy. I'm the one who's on your side. Pick me. I'm on your team. Now look what Zaccheaus said after dinner with Jesus. Meanwhile, Zaccheaus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I've cheated anybody out of their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much. Their law stated if you stole something, you had to pay back the amount plus 20%. Zaccheaus is going above and beyond that to show he's not doing the minimum to get by. See, an encounter with Jesus leads to generosity. It leads to open-handed finances. If you're not generous with your money, I think that means that either one, you haven't encountered Jesus, or two, you're just ignoring what he says about money. We're going to talk more about that in this series. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, a.k.a. Jesus, came to seek and save those who are lost. Now, Jesus calls him a true son of Abraham. Throughout the New Testament, both Jesus and all the other writers make clear that it's not your heritage that makes you right with God. It's a faith that fleshes itself out in action. It's not your tradition that makes you right with God. It's not the denomination you're a part of. It's not the faith of your parents that makes you right with God. It is your faith that makes you a true follower of God or not. So Jesus uses this encounter to change Zacchaeus' life, but he sums it up by reminding both himself and everyone around us, and even us 2,000 years later, this is my vision. This is why I came. And here's why he does this. Because if you don't continually remind yourself and others of the vision, you'll lose it. You'll lose it. You'll go off the vision. I want to read you a mission statement, a vision statement of a university. Well-known university says this: our vision is to be plainly instructed and consider well that the main end of your life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ. That's why this university was founded. It was founded in 1636. They employed only Christians as professors. They focused more on character development than they did academics. In fact, every diploma read this: truth for Christ and the church. But it wasn't a seminary. It wasn't a Bible college. It wasn't some school you would think of as fundamentalist. It was Harvard, as in like Harvard. So 80 years after Harvard was founded, it had gone off course. So some other pastors in New England got together and said, we need to start a different university that can train up Christians and stay devoted to the Christian message. They found a rich philanthropist and said, will you start this school? He agreed to. It was started with the idea of we will stay true to teaching about God. The philanthropist's name was named Elihu Yale. It was Yale University. Today, you know Harvard and Yale for great academics, but you don't know them for their Christian beliefs. In fact, at their 350th anniversary, Harvard invited former Johns Hopkins president Stephen Mueller, and he said, the bad news is the university's become godless. See, both Harvard and Yale's founders were unmistakably clear in their original vision, academic excellence and Christian formation, but they got away from half their vision. There are 2 lessons I want you to learn about vision today from Zaccheaus. Here's the first one. Write this one down. It's possible to be successful at the wrong thing. It's possible to be successful at the wrong thing. See, Zaccheaus was successful. He was rich. The problem is he was successful at the wrong thing. He had achieved what he wanted to do, only to find out it didn't get him what he wanted. Now, success isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. 1 Samuel 18 says David continued to succeed in everything he did. Why? For the Lord was with him. Proverbs 2:7, God holds success in store for the upright. Success is a good thing. But if your ultimate vision is wrong, success is empty, and that's what happened to Zaccheaus. He was successful, but once he climbed the mountain, he realized it was the wrong mountain. I was trying to think of a visual of what would this be like if you're successful at the wrong thing. The thing I thought of is, let's just imagine you're in a basketball game and you get a rebound and you score it on the other team's hoop. You'd be excited that you scored until you realized, I just scored points for the other team. The goal's to score, but not for the other team. And you'd be completely embarrassed and humiliated and try to wipe that memory from your imagination. Not that it really happened to me. I'm just saying hypothetically that's what you would do. In fact, I watched a high school game where a guy was shooting a free throw. Both teams were there. He missed it. One guy on the other team gets the rebound. Both other teams run down the court. This guy who gets the rebound, though, gets turned around and confused, and he tries to lay it back in. He misses, he gets his own rebound, tries to lay it in again, misses a second layup, gets his own rebound again, and the third time he's about to shoot another layup, one of his teammates comes sprinting down the court and just swats him from behind like, you're not going to score against our own team. That's what it looks like if we're successful at the wrong thing. I've had countless pastors give me personal advice. Say, Carl, don't build a great church at the expense of building a great family. Because they said, Carl, we can tell you story after story of people who poured themselves into their church so much they had nothing left to give their family, and their kids ended up hating Jesus and the church. Get a clear, godly vision for your life. Do you know God created you with a purpose? He has. God's plan is for you to turn the world upside down. Following God doesn't mean we live safe little lives where our biggest accomplishment is reading a few verses of the Bible each day. We are supposed to take bold risks and chase big goals that the world thinks are absolutely crazy. But here's the problem. John Ortberg has identified this problem. He says there's this temptation, there's this tendency for all of us to drift into something else, to climb up the wrong mountain. Ortberg calls climbing up the wrong mountain living out your shadow mission. Your shadow mission is to revolve your life around something trivial. In fact, Ortberg tells a story about this of when he was at a retreat with some Christian men. One of them was talking about shadow mission, and he said, my shadow mission is to watch TV and engage in a destructive sexual habit while the world goes to hell. And everybody kind of laughed. He said, I want to say it again, but this time nobody laughed to break the tension. My shadow mission is to watch TV and engage in a destructive sexual habit while the world goes to hell. What's your shadow mission? Is it to portray an attractive image? Is it to be the funny guy? Is it to get so wrapped up in online gaming or reality TV that you're just engaging in false realities or other people's realities instead of the reality God has destined for you? Maybe it's spiritual, like you want to be known as a good Christian. Is your shadow mission to get approval from others? Is it more money or power or success? Is it that you're really good at trying to Instagram a life worth living instead of living a life worth Instagramming? I'll tell you what my shadow mission is. My shadow mission is to lead a church that looks successful. It's to lead a church that looks successful. So I have to continually ask, am I more concerned with leading a church that the numbers continue to grow in attendance and offerings and amount of people in groups, or am I more concerned with helping people encounter the living God who will take control of their hearts and radically change their lives from the inside out, regardless of what the numbers say, regardless of what it looks like, regardless if it's cool? It's a little difference, but it is a huge difference. What's your shadow mission? Most of the time, your shadow mission is the thing that you will passively fall into if you just live life in reaction to what's going on. But when you put into words your shadow mission, it begins to lose its power. We talk a lot at Mosaic about being in community, about being connected. Here's another reason why. If you're in isolation, your shadow mission can more easily take control of you. For some of you in this room, the most important takeaway this week is to have a conversation about this, maybe with the people you came to church with on the way home. You need to just ask, what's your shadow mission? I guarantee you, if you have that conversation, you will take a step towards freedom. Guarantee it. So we've got to have the right vision or we'll miss it. So here's the second point from the story. The most important vision is to save those who are lost. The most important vision is to save those who are lost. In that verse that I read at the beginning where there's no vision, the people perish, the word vision there is actually talking about a revelation from God, a divine vision. It's important to have a vision for your finances and your parenting and how you teach or how you play sports. Those are important, but the most important vision is to save those who are lost. And we know this is true because that's what Jesus said. Look at it again. The Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Think about this. Jesus is God. He could have come to earth for any reason he wanted, but it doesn't say the Son of Man came to do miracles. It doesn't say the Son of Man came to teach, or it doesn't say the Son of Man came to be a good moral example. It doesn't say the Son of Man came to inspire us. Very simply, Jesus says, I have come to seek and save the lost. That's it. The bottom line is, you're lost. You have rebelled against God, and throughout your life, you have done things your way instead of his. That brings death, but Jesus brings life. He died on the cross to set you free, and he rose from the grave to prove you can trust him. So, as we do every week, we're going to celebrate communion to remember that. When I'm done, our band's going to come up here. There will be a tray passed down your row. We want you to take a stack of the cups on there. They'll have cracker and juice representing the body and blood of Christ. We want you to eat and drink that anytime while our band plays. But here's the thing. There are different types of lost. There are different types of lost. In fact, this story Luke tells us in chapter 19 is the culmination of 3 stories he's been telling. I just want to tell you real quick. In Luke chapter 18, right before this, Jesus meets someone described as a rich young ruler. He wants to follow Jesus. Jesus finds out that he's kept all the Jewish commandments since he was a boy. He'd follow God with everything in him. So Jesus says, sell everything you have and come follow me. But it says he walked away sad because he was very rich. He didn't want to do that. He lost his perspective. But Jesus came to seek and save the lost, even those who are rich. After Jesus leaves that conversation, he starts heading to Jericho. But on the way, by the side of the road is a blind beggar, and he's hollering out, Jesus, heal me, Jesus, heal me. Everybody else doesn't want Jesus to get interrupted. He's got more important things to do, they think, so they try and shush him. But Jesus goes over to him, and he heals him. That man had lost hope. And Jesus came to seek and save the lost, even those who'd lost hope. And then Jesus goes into Jericho, and he meets Zaccheaus, and he had lost perspective when it comes to money. See, here's the thing. The rich young ruler was successful from the perspective of religion. Zaccheaus looked successful from the perspective of the world. The blind beggar didn't look successful from anybody's perspective. But from the perspective of Jesus, they were all lost. They're all lost. Whether they were successful from the perspective of religion or successful from the perspective of the world or not successful at all, they were all lost. You are lost. Jesus wants to give you hope. He wants to give you purpose. He wants to give you grace. And I don't mean to offend you today if you're sitting here thinking, well, I'm not lost. Okay, all right. But keep this in mind. Another way you could translate what Jesus said here is the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was dead. Is there a part of you that's dead? Is there something in you that just hasn't been alive for a long time? Jesus wants to bring a resurrection to that. So let me say this. We believe that the church is the place where if you're lost, if you're tired, if you're hungry, if you're worn out, if you're dead, you can come and find life through Jesus. It's what we've seen over and over again in this place. You're going to see more baptisms in a few minutes. It's why we're opening a second location in a year. That's what the Upside Down campaign is about. Jesus came to seek and save those who are lost, so let's keep joining him in his mission. Now, let me kind of clarify some things or bring you up to speed on what this campaign is about. Upside Down is our campaign to raise money to launch a second location next September. We're going to be one church with 2 locations. In order to launch a second location, we need to raise $750,000 above normal giving. So this 5-week message series will culminate on November 22nd and 23rd with you filling out a card of what you'd like to commit above your normal giving towards that goal. I personally am going to meet with every growth group this semester to answer any questions you have about this campaign or about the second location. By the way, if you're not in a growth group, you're going to want to get your connection card back out before you drop it off on your way out today, because on the back of it, there's a box referencing an open Q&A. And if you're not in a growth group, that's one we're having here just for you. You do need to RSVP, but go ahead and check that box so you can attend that evening. Now, I have a big announcement regarding this campaign that just came together this week. Let me kind of preface it with this. On your way out today, you're going to receive this brochure. It'll answer some of the questions you have about this campaign and the second location and everything. If you open it to the back, there'll be a commitment card glued on there, but I want to draw your attention to these 3 circles. I know you can't read them from where you are, but it says, we're challenging you to give excellently, regularly, and creatively. Let me explain these. Creatively means we've seen in campaigns like this, people give things where they say, I don't really have any money to give, but I have an extra car, or I have this stock, or I have a bike I can donate that could be liquidated and given in the campaign. Regularly is we're challenging everybody to make a commitment above your normal giving for 13 months through the end of 2015. By the way, if you're a first-time guest today, we're glad you're here. You can ignore this. We don't ask for $750,000 every week, I promise. The third thing on here is excellently. We want to challenge everybody to give excellently. Here's what we mean, is on Commitment Weekend, November 22nd and 23rd, we want every single person who calls Mosaic home to write the biggest check or the biggest online gift that you've ever given here. Now, here's the really big news that just came together this week. Some people came to me this week and they said, Carl, here's the deal. We believe in this vision. We believe in Mosaic and what God's doing here. So we are going to match every single gift that's given on commitment weekend. So whatever you give on November 22nd and 23rd is going to instantly be doubled in the kingdom of God. If you know a better investment than that, I want you to find me in the lobby because I want to know what it is. The reason we're doing all this is because of our vision, because of Jesus' vision. Because we believe it doesn't matter why you're lost or why you're dead. This is the place where life is available. Now here's the thing. Everything I've said up in this message up to this point, every church says. Every church says it, or at least they should say it. I think they say it. But there are two errors that churches and Christians fall into. I want to explain one with a reality TV show and one from Jim Bergen. Let me explain. I've kind of gone through my reality TV kicks over the year. I got into Survivor when that was like new on the scene, and who's going to be voted off the island tonight was the big drama. And then I kind of transitioned to Donald Trump's hair and watched The Apprentice. And then now I'll occasionally watch The Biggest Loser because I think that's pretty inspiring. But let's be honest, the only real best reality show is called Sports, right? Anyway, There was one show a few years ago that was on, I think it's canceled now, that had this wild thing happen. It was called Extreme Makeover. You may remember this. It was where they found someone and they would give them like a dozen plastic surgeries and give them new makeup and wardrobe and transform them into someone that they considered beautiful or whatever. And so it was a pretty wild show, but there was one almost like participant, whatever you call it, named Delise Williams a few years ago where things didn't go how she wanted. She ended up suing the show. Let me explain what happened. She was supposed to go on the show. They had done all this pre-work and had all the consults with the doctors and everything. But the night before she was supposed to go on the show, they canceled everything. They got her on a plane and sent her back home to Texas. Now, they had already done a bunch of the pre-interviews and filming. They'd interviewed all of her friends and close family and said, tell us about Delise. But they coached her specifically, tell us about physical flaws she has. Tell us how you think she's ugly or any dark thought you've ever had and how that could have impacted her dating or marriage or hurt her relationships and what you would like to see different in her physical appearance. And, at this coaching, they ended up saying horrible things. Don't look at me that way. I didn't make them say that. I'm just saying this is what these other people said. But they did all this, and then she got sent home. But somehow Delise saw all of these interviews, and it just wrecked all of her relationships. Her sister even committed suicide as a result of just the trauma that it caused this family. Horrible situation. Here was why she quit the show, or why they made her quit. Is the night before her surgeries were set to begin, the dental surgeon was looking over all her dental records and realized, I'm going to have to do a different type of surgery than I realized. He contacted the producers and said, hey, I'm good to go. We're still good to go. I can fix everything and make her teeth straight or whatever. But I want you to know her recovery is going to take way longer than I'd originally told you. And the producers said, no, we can't fit that in our filming schedule. They said, since you can't get well quick enough, you got to go home. You ever been in that church? You ever been around that Christian? You ever been that Christian? Who says, you better get your stuff together and do it quick or you're out of here. That's what some churches do. That's what some Christians do, isn't it? You're welcome here, but get your stuff together or hit the road. I wondered, why do some churches do that? Because I've heard the stories. Why do Christians do that? And then I realized, I know why. That's what we all do to ourselves. We all have that exact attitude with ourselves. And so you'll say things like, I need to get in shape, but if I'm not a size 8 by next month, I'm going to give up on the whole thing. Or I need to get sober, but if I get drunk one time, I'm obviously not cut out for that. I'll give up. I'll try to get control of my money, but if I go over budget 1 month, I might as well not even try again. And we tell ourselves, get it together now or give up. That's an anti-gospel, anti-grace mentality that we're going to talk more about in this series. But what you need to understand is because our vision is to reach out to those who are lost and dead, it's okay if it takes you a while to get healthy. Make no mistake, we want you to get healthy. But if it takes a while, that's okay. A hospital doesn't kick somebody out just because they're taking longer than another patient to get well after surgery. And we are not going to kick somebody out because the recovery from living for themselves takes longer than somebody else's, because I would have been kicked out a long time ago. Our church will not be like Extreme Makeover. We will be a place where anyone can come, where the hungry are given something to eat, where the thirsty are given something to drink, and where every soul finds rest in the promises of God. Jim Bergen wrote the book No More Dragons. that all of our growth groups are going through, that a lot of you are being challenged by. In April, our staff was fortunate to hear Jim Bergen speak to a bunch of pastors. We were in a room with like 4,000 other pastors, and Jim Bergen spoke and threw down, and he asked this question that really has messed with me. Here's a question he asked that room of pastors. He said, in your church, how lost is too lost? How lost is too lost? Like if Jesus came to seek and save the lost, in your church, how lost is too lost? So let's say lost is on a scale of 1 to 10. Like there's no scale, but if 1 is like you are a good moral person and you're just right there about ready to be baptized, and if 10 is the worst person you can imagine who takes advantage of other people and has done illegal things and manipulates people and situations and finances, how lost is too lost? 6? 7? How lost is too lost? The error that most Christians or most churches make is they draw a line in the sand and they say, you can be this broken, but no more. And we will not be those Christians. So it doesn't matter how many times you've messed up. It doesn't matter how many times you've fallen. It doesn't matter how many times you have let people down who have genuinely poured into you and said, I want to help you, and you've just turned your back on them and walked away. We are a place where you can stay here and get well. You are not too lost here. After Jim spoke to that room of 4,000 pastors, he took me out to dinner at Fogo de Chao. Now, time out. If you have not been to Fogo de Chao, write this down, even if you haven't been taking notes so far. Go to Fogo de Chao immediately after the service. Get your hoodie, get your free t-shirt if you're a first-time guest, get in your car, drive to downtown Baltimore. They will valet park your car. You walk in the restaurant, and you can send me a thank you note tomorrow. Because here's what happens when you go to Fogo de Chao. There is no menu. They just bring you meat. And they bring it on skewers, and they bring as much of it as you want. So if you say, I want all of that steak, they'll give you all that steak. They have all different kinds of meat you can imagine. So when I went with Jim, we sat down, and they said, would you like a plate for your salad? We said, no, we do not come to Fogo de Chao to eat salad. You can bring us cow and bring it now, and if it's wrapped in pig, that will be even better. And then we ate until we could not eat anymore. Time back in. As we were wrapping up dinner, I asked Jim, I said, Jim, how do we at Mosaic keep brokenness front and center? How do we do that? I think we're doing a good job, but how do we not lose that? And the reason I want to ask Jim specifically, and maybe you've picked this up from his book, but he has a really large church, and I feel like his church has grown without losing that. It's really the only large church I know that keeps brokenness front and center like Mosaic does. In fact, the phrase I say, me too, I stole from Jim. But I asked him this question, how do we keep brokenness front and center so you don't have to have your stuff together to be here? And he said this, he said, Carl, keep telling stories. It's like, okay, we do that. But then he said this, don't feel like you've got to have a bow on them. He said, don't feel like people need to have cleaned up everything before you tell their story. I said, Jim, I get it. See, here's what I've come to believe. If we create a community where it's okay to be broken, where you can't be too lost, we're going to need a lot more than a second campus. We'll need a third campus or a fourth location or a bigger warehouse or something. So I want to tell you a story. In fact, we're going to tell lots of stories during this series. And none of the stories you hear over the next several weeks are of people who've arrived. They have not gotten healthy quickly enough. They do not have perfect lives. They are still broken and in process in their different ways. But these stories are who we are. So listen to Laura's story right now.
Hi, my name is Laura Earhart. I'm from Northern Virginia. I've been coming to Mosaic for about a year, and this is my story. I grew up in a family that went to church, and I don't really know if it was because my parents truly believed or it was because Grandpa's here and we have to go to church. So I'm not sure, which I just know we went. And we went up until I was in middle school in 7th grade. My mom got breast cancer, and then rather than, dinners at our door and meal train and all that stuff, it was, why are you missing church? And there was interrogation about why aren't you here? And then, other things, happened just here and there, just hypocrisy and just stuff that didn't make sense. I had this really good friend, and we hung out all the time, and he just totally took advantage of me, and it doesn't make sense because I just trusted him, not even really realizing until months later that I'm oh, he raped me. Oh, that's what happened. Okay. And if I wasn't already really just kind of downtrodden in my viewpoint of religion in general, that kind of like nail in the coffin. I think that just kind of, it hardened me a lot. Just my mom having cancer, just people being against us, and just trusting someone so implicitly and then having it go so wrong. I took a step back and I was like, you know what, I'm good for a while. And then, I had other people kind of talk to me and be like, well, where's God? Why does your mom have breast cancer? Why did you get raped by your best friend? Why did this happen? Where's God? And in conjunction with all the really rough stuff that I was going through, it really made sense. And then I totally backflipped off the Jesus wagon, and for a long time, 10 years. And then I just went from series of bad relationship to bad relationship to bad relationship. And, I stayed with a person that beat the crap out of me every day. Why? Even now I'm just what was I doing? Was I aware? Was I awake at that point? So I got out of there because that was bad. And then third time's the charm. I met my husband now, John, and he's amazing. And we got married in January of 2010. So this January 9th, it'll be 5 years. And we got pregnant with my daughter, Olivia, and she's 2 years old now, or she will be in November. And I had an interest in going back to church after a long hiatus. I had a couple people endorse Mosaic very highly, and initially my husband has family that knows Jonathan, and they were like, Mosaic would be perfect for you, you need to go, and I was like, no, I'm good. And then I had another couple people that were like, no, for real, you need to go. And I came, my neighbor Alexa Welch brought me for the first time, and I was like, what is this place? And then Ben killed it, and then I'm just like, what's happening? I didn't know Jesus was allowed to be cool. The whole Jesus is practical and you don't have to be an old woman in a cardigan to love him. And I just didn't ever think that was a possibility. So but Battle Scars really just spoke deep into my soul, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. And then I like to tell people that this church this church/God put me from borderline atheist to getting baptized in 2 months. I never thought that I would say yeah, Jesus died for me and he did that for me, and I didn't even I wasn't even close to an existence yet, but he knows me and he loves me, even though I'm totally screwed up and I'm really a bad person sometimes. It doesn't matter because he loves me, and no matter what happens in my life, whatever garbage I go through, whatever garbage I've been through, God loves me. Everything that Carl or whoever's up there on the stage preaching has said is no, come to Jesus because he will change you. It's not a joke, and it's not a greeting card saying, and it's not some kitschy little bumper sticker. It's so real, and it's true, and it's just so ridiculously powerful that it changed my entire life.
Come on. Good. We're a church for people who don't go to church. Jesus is the most important thing here. He is our Savior. He is our Lord. He forgives us and he leads us not because of anything we've done, but because of his mercy and grace that called to us before we even responded. The most important thing to Jesus is lost people. That's why we're here. We've wandered off, gotten ourselves in trouble, but Jesus is leading us to life. We base everything we do on the Bible. We will run towards Jesus, and we will do everything in a way that makes sense to the lost people around us. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get healthy. Jesus wants you to give your life to him. It doesn't matter how lost you are. Jesus wants you to come home. He wants to turn your life upside down, and because we are sold out to Jesus' vision for his church, we will be a church that turns the world upside down. Let's celebrate communion and worship him right now.